we're going to start out now shifting away from morphology per se and terminology to actually how one gets through the keys in the Jepson eFlora and Jepson Manual to identify plants, just sort of the overall layout of all this and the methodology involved. And I'm going to be using the Jepson eFlora as the general way of orienting you, although you could use the Jepson Manual, and it's basically, the keys are laid out in a similar way, and they'll be identical unless the group's been revised since the Jepson Manual was published. And I should point out, every year, this is the homepage for the Jepson eFlora within the Jepson Herbarium website. And every year since 2012, we have released revisions of the Jepson eFlora where you can find changes that have been made, but they're totally incorporated into the eFlora, so you don't need to do that. But in any case, if you actually know the plant, so when we go to identify a plant, the way taxonomy is set up botanically is that there is a hierarchy of categories or ranks. And we talked about flowering plants, which is the main subject of this workshop. That represents a higher level taxon or named group, angiosperms. And the level at which we're below angiosperms that we're identifying plants here, typically, the way that the keys are set out in the Jepson Manual is that if you don't even need to know if it's a flowering plant, you just need to know it's a vascular plant. And if you know anything about its position with regard to the family, which is a category above the level of genus, and genus is the category above the level of species. So keying to plant family is the first thing we need to do. As long as we know we have a vascular plant in hand, that is, as long as we know it's either a flowering plant or a seed plant in general, that is, could be a gymnosperm or a fern or a lycophyte. And we can go in and figure out what family it is in the Jepson Manual or eFlora. If you already know what family it is, or you know what genus, or know what genus it is, or species, you can enter that in this field, scientific name, and submit the name, and it'll take you to that place in the eFlora, and then you can key from there to get it to a finer scale of identification, down to species or subspecies or variety. But if you don't know the family, then we're going to have to key to family. And there's a link right here, key to families. And that's where you're going to want to go. And the key to families is extensive because we have a lot of plant families in the California flora. And in general, what I recommend is that people take a course in California plant families, like Linda Beidelman's 50 Plant Families in the Jepson Workshop series, to familiarize yourself with enough families to where you can start at the level of family and don't have to key to family, because it is an elaborate key. But anyways, our keys in general in the Jepson eFlora and the Jepson Manual are dichotomous keys, which means that you're given a pair of choices, and whichever of those two choices you take dictates your next pair of choices until you get to your answer. So for example, here in the key to groups, these are informal groups of families. We have a choice 1 and 1 prime, and these are out at the same level of indentation here, so you can find them relatively easily. If we choose 1 prime, then we would then go to 7 versus 7 prime. If we choose 7 prime, we go to 8 versus 8 prime here, and so forth. If we eventually end up, we go to 12 versus 12 prime, we choose 12, we get to group 10. So when you eventually get to the end to one of these groups, and that's your final choice, you just click on that, or in the case of the book, turn to that page, which is given, and then you'll have the same kind of layout again, a dichotomous key, where you can key to family within these particular groups of families. And when you get to that particular family, you click on that, and you'll have a description of that family. you can read that description and realize, is that consistent with the plant I have in hand or not? If it is, then go ahead and go to the key to the genera, the key to that family, which will be right at the last item in the family description. You'll see that link there, key to Rosaceae, the rose family. And you go to that key, and then there'll be a dichotomous key here to genera. So each one of these is a genus. And if we choose one of these, if we key the plant out to one of these genera like rubus, then have a description again here of the genus and decide whether that fits. If it does, then we can go to the key to rubus, which will be again at the end of the description. And then this will take us to species. Or if there are infraspecific taxa like subspecies or varieties, it will take us to those at a lower, an even more precise, to a finer scale level. And again, a dichotomous key. And you can see that in these keys, there are those terms that are underlined have a link to a definition or a diagram or both. But there also is an independent Jepson glossary back at that homepage that has all the terms listed alphabetically, but this is built into the keys. And then if you go to a particular species, again, the description, and in this case, there are no subspecies or varieties. We don't have a link to keys, or there's no key beyond that point in the main key. But once we get to a species or a final minimum rank taxon, be it a variety or subspecies, or if there are none, then a species, we'll have the illustrations from the Jepson Manual here that are relevant. And we'll have the a photograph verified from Cal Photos. And we also, or one or more. And then we'll also have the bioregional description or the bioregional distribution based on the Jepson bioregions that I'll get to in a moment. And we also will have a map of representatives of that taxon, that species, from the Consortium of California Herbaria, which is a large consortium of about 50 herbaria that are interlinked with the Jepson eFlora with regard to Californian vascular plant collections. So we can see the distribution based on georeferenced locality data for individual collections, and also the author interpretation of the range here at the level of bioregion. And there are some other resources here too, in terms of when the collections were made by month and et cetera. But also there's a link here to the Index of California Plant Names and the online interchange for California floristics for this species. And if you click there, it takes us to other resources of the Jepson Flora Project, in addition to the eFlora, like the specimen records in particular of the Consortium of California Herbaria, which you can also get to through the species description. And Jepson's own description of that species from his unfinished Flora of California, and any other resources here, and then external links to other external resources outside the Jepson eFlora for that particular species, linking you directly to that species entry there. If you want to learn about the nomenclatural and taxonomic history of that plant, there might be notes here under more info for the Index of California Plant Names, which is a Jepson resource. Okay, so I want to go back quickly. I'm almost out of time here. But I do want to make one point is that we're back here to the homepage for the Jepson eFlora. If you just type in Jepson eFlora to Google, you'll get there right away, top hit. The glossary is right here, where you can look up definitions of terms. The geographic subdivisions of California are described on this page, just below the glossary. There's an abbreviation used for each of these distributions in the geographic distribution string that you can become accustomed to fairly quickly. And we don't use counties because we want these bioregional distributions to mean something ecologically. And so this has actually been this system of breaking California into these geographic subdivisions has been widely adopted by ecologists and vegetation scientists, because it is meaningful biologically. Also, if you know what region you are in within the bioregions of California, you can simplify your keying task by going in here and selecting that region. So if you're on the North Coast, you just enter NCO, and it will take you to prune keys. That as we go from one place to another in California, we lose a lot of, the flora changes quite a lot, and it simplifies the keying effort if you key within the filtered keys. And you can do that from the beginning of the key, or if you enter a family or say a genus like Silene here, it'll highlight that particular part of the overall keying network. And you can key the plant with many fewer choices than you would if you keyed at the level of the state. And you can use an interactive key here where you make a choice and it limits the number of options here until you get down to the correct choice. Or you can use bracketed keys. Some people find easier, or indented keys are the ones we have in the eFlora as a whole. So that's another resource that's really helpful for simplifying keying.